Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, how important is warming up and what makes a good warm up complete? Warming up is incredibly important, right? For multiple reasons. The main reason was you want to avoid injury at all costs. A cold muscle is a muscle that's at risk of getting pulled, strained, torn. Okay, so you need your muscle bellies to be warmed up. You need your joints, your ligaments, and tendons to be warmed up. But that doesn't mean that you have to go walk on a treadmill for 15 minutes. That also doesn't mean that you have to spend 30 minutes doing static stretching. My recommendation for most people, a good warm up is just doing some dynamic stretches. Okay, so that's any stretching that revolves movement. So you can do like rotations with your shoulders, right? If you're doing an upper body workout, you can do some little bit of hip rotations for your lower body if you're doing a lower body workout, right? Another thing that I like to do with my clients is that I'll just warm them up with the weights. So rather like say we're doing, I don't know, we're doing a leg day and first exercise, barbell back squats. Rather than have the person start with 45 pounds a side, I might have them start with 25 pounds a side, a weight that they can easily do. Okay, so it's what I always do with clients is when I'm with them in the gym, I say, okay, we're gonna pick a weight that you could easily knock out if I asked you to 30, 40 reps with. But I don't want 30 or 40 reps. I want you to still give me 15 reps. But what I'm just trying to do is release synovial fluid into the joints, the tendons, the ligaments. And for those that don't know, synovial fluid is like I compare it to WD-40, right? So it just loosens everything up. And I'll do that for the first 3 or 4 sets of an exercise or the workout. So if I'm doing circuits with somebody, let's say we're doing a chest and back workout and we're starting off with like low incline barbell press, a seated row, a flat dumbbell press, and maybe a lat pull down, I'll put all the weights for round one at about 60% of what I know that person can do. So they can easily perform that round. And all I'm trying to do is loosen up the muscle bellies, loosens up the tendons, loosen up the joints. Okay. So I think it's incredibly important. But like I said, I don't believe that you need to spend 15 minutes on a treadmill, 10, 15 minutes doing static stretches, or worse, when I see people playing on rollers for 30 minutes while they're on their phones or talking to their trainer. I don't think that's necessary. I think all you need to do is you just need to make sure that you're paying attention to what you're doing, and making sure that you're feeling out the muscles too. That's very important. I talked about that last week, how it's so important to listen to your body and to create that mind to muscle connection. And I feel a lot of people don't do that. They're either not focused because they're either talking to their trainer or talking to their friend, or they're looking at their phone nonstop. So they're not really in tune with what their body is doing. So for me, for example, if I'm doing a chest workout and I'm starting my workout with low incline barbell presses, I start with the bar. And I don't count that as a set. I count it as a warm-up set, but I don't count it as a working set. And all I'm trying to do is get a feel for that bar. Everything feels okay. My shoulders feel okay. My pecs feel okay. Hell, my triceps feel okay. And how do my elbows feel? Right. So I'm really paying attention to how my muscles and my joints feel. If they're still feeling a little stiff, I might not start off with my usual weight. I might start even lighter. Okay. If everything feels good, I'll start with my usual weight. So I really pay attention to what my body is telling me. But that's my recommendation when it comes to warming up. I like to warm up clients with just a lighter weight. I'll throw in some dynamic stretches. If I have someone that comes in early and I'm finishing up with somebody or finishing up with a class, I'll tell them to do some dynamic stretching. Okay, they don't need me to stand there and watch them on a treadmill. That's a waste of their time. It's a waste of their money. Okay, so dynamic stretching, it's a great way just to loosen up the joints, tendons, ligaments. If you're not familiar with how to do dynamic stretching, my recommendation to you is go to my Instagram. I've got tons of videos of myself doing dynamic stretches. You could also just go on YouTube, type in dynamic stretches, and watch other trainers doing them as well. But they're incredibly beneficial. So I would throw those in addition to warming up with lower weights. And again, weights that you can easily knock out 30 reps if you needed to. So I always tell people that about 60% of what you would normally lift in the gym. That's my recommendation if you want to make sure that you warm up properly so you can avoid injury at all costs. Okay. Nick, are long workouts better than shorter, high intensity sessions? So I never put a time on how long a workout should be. And the reason for that is because I've always been a firm believer in taking the muscles to pure exhaustion, not taking them to true failure, but taking the muscles to exhaustion. And what I mean by that is I have a little bit left in the tank, but they're done for the workout. So I never like to take anything to true failure because I find if you take a set to true failure, you really risk injury. Your risk of injury goes up substantially. So I always find that if you're training, for example, a 5 day training split where you're focused on one muscle group, and let's say it's your chest, so you have a whole workout dedicated to chest. I feel that depending on the individual, depending on their level of fitness, depending on their genetics, depending on their goals, most people can get a great chest workout in if they stick anywhere between 15 to 20 sets. Okay. I like to overtrain though. So I'll sometimes do 35 to 40 sets, but a lot of those sets are light sets. I also don't rest very long between sets, 45, 60 seconds max. Okay. So I don't take these prolonged rest periods. So my workouts are usually fairly short. They are still intense, but they're not taking things beyond failure. Okay, or even to failure. So a typical workout for me will be anywhere from 40 to 45 minutes. Keep in mind though, I train one muscle group per workout. So I have 1 day dedicated to chest, 1 day dedicated to arms, 1 day dedicated to shoulders, 1 day dedicated to legs, 1 day dedicated to back. Actually, right now I have 2 days dedicated to back, a row day and pull down day. I went back to my old competition split. But again, it's just one full workout dedicated to rowing movements and one full workout dedicated to pulling movements. And I'll still knock out between 35, 40 sets. But again, a lot of those sets are light sets. I call them feel sets. I'm warming up. I still count them as sets though, because I'm still working the muscles. Okay. So it's not about, oh, well, if you're in the gym for 2 hours, you're going to get a better workout than if you're in the gym for half an hour. Not necessarily. I see a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that I work with that come late for their sessions. I've talked about this in the past, who get more done in 40 minutes than my clients who show up for a full 60-minute workout. And the people who show up for 60 minutes will say, see, I'm never late. I'm like, well, yeah, that's good for you. But the people that are late are actually still training hard. So I would argue and say that they're probably getting the same effective workout as you, as the person who's there for 60 minutes. So it's not about the time, it's what you do with the time that you're given. Okay. So to answer that question, yeah, I prefer to do shorter, intense workouts. However, the definition of intensity can be different for everyone. And for me, it's not about going balls to wall and taking everything to failure and, leaving nothing else in the tank. I'm like, no, no. I like to have a little bit left in the tank because I don't want to wreck my joints. I don't want to have back pain. I don't want to have knee pain. So I make sure that I keep the tension on the muscles and not the joints, the tendons, and the ligaments in order to proper stimulate protein synthesis into the muscle bellies and create hypertrophy, which will help me build and sustain muscle. Okay. So that's my philosophy when it comes to training. I train hard, but I would say if I were to rate from a scale of 1 to 10 how hard I train, I would say I probably could keep it at about a level 8 throughout the 40, 45 minutes. I don't push it to a 10. I don't keep it at a 5. I keep it at about a level 8. In and out of the gym, laser focused. In my opinion, that's the best way to get results. Okay. Nick, how do you structure a balanced weekly workout routine? Okay, so this will depend on how many days you're going to be in the gym. If you're following, like I said earlier, a 5 day training split, that could look something like chest day one, back day two, shoulders day three, arms day four, legs day five. Right? If you're in the gym 3 days a week, that could look something like chest and back day one, shoulders, biceps, and triceps day two, quadriceps, hamstrings, calves, and abs day three. Okay. So it really depends on the training split that you're following. What I would not recommend, and I've talked about this a few times on this channel, is doing full body workouts multiple times a week. So if you're in the gym for 5 days a week, you don't want to be doing 5 full body workouts. If you're in the gym 3 days a week, you don't want to be doing 3 full body workouts. I think, again, the risk of injury goes up substantially because you're not giving those muscles enough rest to fully recover. And what happens if a muscle is not recovered, just like what I said earlier, if a muscle is cold, you risk injury. Well, if a muscle is not recovered and you go to, if you're doing a press or you're doing a pull or you're doing a squat and that muscle is still exhausted, you really do risk injuring yourself. So that's why I like working each muscle group once per week. Squat once per week, bench press once per week, row once per week, deadlift once per week. Okay. And if you do that and you do it properly, and you really focus on what you're doing. And again, you stay in that level of intensity. You're giving about 80, 85%, not 100%, not 30%. You're going to see results. Okay. But it's not like there's a magical workout split to follow. Okay, it's really dependent on how many days you're in the gym. Another thing to pay attention to too is as you continue along with your training over the years. So if someone who's more advanced, let's say an intermediate bodybuilder or someone who's been lifting weights for 3 or 4 years, you might want to start assessing your physique and saying, okay, where are my weaknesses? For example, for myself, I always had very strong legs. So I didn't really have to, I still train my legs hard, but I didn't really have to prioritize my legs, but I had a very weak back. So when I was competing, I always prioritized my back. And once I started to notice that, as I got on stage, I'm like, yeah, I'm looking pretty good, but the judges would always critique my back. I added in a second back day. But as I said, I had a row day and a pull down day. So I wasn't doing multiple rows each week and I wasn't doing multiple pull downs each week. I had one pull down day and one row day. So for example, if you're someone who has a weaker lower body, you might want to split up your leg workouts and have quads on one day and have hamstrings and glutes on a second day. Okay. So it really depends on that. But I wouldn't even start nitpicking about your weaknesses until you've been training consistently for at least 3 to 5 years because you truly don't know what your weaknesses are. And I've had people train with me for, God, 10, 15 years, but a lot of those people only train maybe 2 times a week. And even then, it's really hard to assess what your weaknesses are because if you're training 2 times a week, I mean, that's great. They've still achieved great results with their physique, but you're not going to receive or achieve, I should say, the same results as someone who's in the gym 5 days a week, right? That's a reality. So you're not going to be able to really assess, okay, well, maybe I should dedicate a whole day, 2 days to my legs. Well, no, if you're only training 2 days a week, you don't want to do that. So you might want to have an upper body day and a lower body day. Okay, so you structure the workout based on the frequency that you're going to be in the gym and make sure, this is important, make sure the workouts that you're putting together make sense. Okay, so you don't want to just make it up as you go. My recommendation, agonist versus antagonist muscle groups, if you're combining multiple muscle groups in a workout. So chest and back's a good one. Biceps and triceps are a good one. Quadriceps and hamstrings are another good one. Okay, so don't put chest with triceps because your triceps are your synergist muscle in a pressing movement. So the time you get to do your triceps, by the time you finish chest, your triceps are going to be tired. Okay, same thing. Don't do your biceps with back because the time you get to biceps after you train back, your biceps are going to be tired. So I try to keep the synergist muscles away from the primary muscle groups when designing a workout split for a client. Okay, and I feel that that works best for most people. All right. Nick, how can people stay motivated to work out consistently? So it's really easy to get motivated when you start seeing results, right? I mean, everyone loves seeing results. If you start seeing, wow, I've got some definition in my abs or I'm down 3 pant sizes, I mean, there's extra motivation there, right? So visual motivation is huge for a lot of people. And I notice that for a lot of my clients, when they start seeing results, they get extra motivated. They want to keep coming back for more. It's almost like an addiction. But there comes a point where you're going to hit a plateau. And I can tell you this from myself. Everyone hits a plateau. Okay. So if vanity gets you into the gym, that's great, but that's a short-term goal because there will come a time where you're not going to see substantial results with your physique anymore. Especially for those people who've been training for 5, 6 years. It's really hard to continuously add on muscle each year unless you're taking anabolic steroids. And the same thing, if you're already quite lean, it's very hard to get leaner and leaner. Okay. So at that point, you have to have a long-term vision and a long-term goal. And what I've always utilized for myself is I feel like, okay, what benefits am I getting from going to the gym besides the aesthetics? Okay. Well, overall health. Okay. I feel better. I feel like I have more energy. I sleep better. I'm in better moods. Okay. So that's important too, because a lot of people, they're always wondering why, I'm always so tired. I have no energy or they're cranky. They're irritable. I'm like, yeah, you need to move. Your body craves movement. So for me, it's goes far beyond the aesthetics now. Especially now that I'm in my 40s. I mean, I still want to look good, but that's no longer my primary goal. My primary goal is still wanting to feel good and feel better in my 40s than I did in my 20s and have lots of energy. And I talked about this in the past how I don't want to have to rely on stimulants. I don't need a cup of coffee when I wake up in the morning. I don't need to have, a sugar rush in the afternoon because I feel like I'm crashing. Okay, I don't want that. And I attribute that to my lifestyle. So it goes beyond the gym. It also goes with the dietary nutrition and the supplementation. Okay, so what I always recommend to people is constantly set new goals. It's good to have short-term goals and it's good to have long-term goals, but continuously check in on your goals and say, okay, well, now like I did a bodybuilding show, for example. Maybe that was your goal. You did the bodybuilding show, but now what? Because if that was your only goal, what are you going to do afterwards? Right? You're just going to, well, now I'm just going to stop going to gym and I'm going to relax on my diet because that happens a lot of times to people, right? They have this big event that they're training for, whether it be a wedding or a photo shoot, beach vacation, bodybuilding show. And then once the event's over, they take their foot off the gas. And I've seen this time and time again with people. And it's, in bodybuilding, we call it the post contest rebound. And that's not always a good thing because sometimes people rebound in the wrong direction. Um, so that's why I tell a lot of the people I work with who are training for specific events, that's great. You have a deadline. Great. You're setting a smart goal, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely goal. But we need to have another goal once we've accomplished this goal or once this event has passed, regardless how the event went. Maybe you didn't do well at the bodybuilding show. Maybe you didn't look as good as you wanted to look at your wedding or the photo shoot. But regardless, that event has now passed. We need to have another goal. Okay. So that's important. And that I feel that keeps people motivated. It keeps me motivated anyway, because I'm continuously setting new goals. All right. Right now, my goal is to see if I can train 6 months in a row with no break. Right now, I've done 5 months since July 6th, 5 months. So my goal is to get to January 6th, no break in the gym. I want to train every day. That's my goal. And, for a lot of people, that's a ridiculous goal. I'm like, for you, it's a ridiculous goal, but for me, it's my goal. Okay, so your goal is a very personal thing, but if you keep your laser focus on that goal and say, this is what I want to achieve, you can achieve it. But you have to stay focused. And in order to stay focused, you have to be consistent. Okay. And that's how, in my opinion, you stay consistent with your workouts and your diet and your supplementation. Okay. Nick, should beginners start with machines or free weights? Yeah, I still come from that old school mindset that free weights always triumph over machines, always. The problem with machines is you're not using your stabilizers, and that's so important. I compare it to riding a bike. If you constantly ride a bike and you have training wheels, you never truly learn how to ride a bike. You always have your training wheels on the back, right? So yeah, you'll still get from point A to point B with the training wheels on there, but you'll get to point A to point B faster when the training wheels are taken off. And the same thing, the same rule applies for weight training. Like, yes, machines will help you to a degree. They will. But in my opinion, you'll get faster results by using your stabilizers. So you're utilizing more energy. You're recruiting more muscle fibers. It's much more challenging to put a barbell on your back and squat down to the floor and back up again for 12 to 15 reps than it is to get on a Smith machine and let the machine do it for you. I don't care what people say. They're not even comparable. And I can really see the difference in physiques from people who use machines versus people who use free weights. Now, there's people that use a combination of the two, and that's fine. But I still think you're making a mistake if the majority of your exercises are done on machines. I truly do, especially if you're a beginner. Because the problem is too, if you are a beginner and you're utilizing machines more than you are free weights, you're never really teaching your body how to do these planes and ranges of motion properly. Okay, because the machine kind of dictates the movement for you. All right. I can see where machines might have their place when it comes to maybe rehabilitating a muscle. Maybe you got out of a surgery, maybe you tore a bicep, whatever it may be. Maybe you tore a pec and it's really hard for you to get under a barbell right now. I get it. But if you're someone who's never had a torn muscle, like and you're good to go, especially if you're a beginner, I think you're doing yourself a disservice by getting on machines. I truly do. So my workouts to this day, I still squat. I have a lot of buddies that tell me they can't squat anymore. They've got bad knees. And, that can be for multiple reasons. Sometimes it's genetics, sometimes wear and tear, sometimes maybe going too heavy when they were younger. But I've always been a firm believer in A, not going too heavy, as I mentioned in one of the earlier questions. But B is also making sure that I'm really, when I'm doing, like, say, a squat, for example, that I'm creating that strong mind to muscle connection with my hamstrings and my glutes, not just my quads. Because if I just focus on my quads, once fatigue sets in, my patella and my meniscus are going to start taking over my knees. So I tap into that mind to muscle connection. If I had started my bodybuilding career or even my weight training career doing machines, I would have never been able to have that strong mind to muscle connection ever. I wouldn't because the machine would be doing it for me. So as I would continue on in my years, maybe my knees were bothering me, but I wouldn't know how to properly contract my hamstrings and glutes in the case of doing a barbell back squat, which most people don't. Okay, most people just they're so quad dominant, they focus more on the quads and then they have knee issues. Okay, so I'm just using the squat as an example. So I really feel that you're doing a disservice to yourself if you're relying more on machines. And my recommendation to everyone, beginner, intermediate, advanced, 80% of your workout, I mean, for me, it's 100%, but 80% of your workout should be done on free weights, as in barbells, dumbbells, cables, and maybe 15, 20% machines, hammer strength machines, so on. Okay. But that's my recommendation. If you truly want to develop not just an aesthetically pleasing physique, but you want to strengthen your stabilizer muscles. And I mean, who doesn't want to strengthen their core and their stabilizer muscles? Of course you do. You don't want to have this pretty physique, but on the inside it's weak. Okay. So free weights will always triumph over machines. Always. Okay. Nick, how does age affect workout programming? In my opinion, it doesn't. What affects workout programming? Lifestyle, fitness level, gender, genetics, goals. Age, irrelevant to me. Completely irrelevant to me. I'll tell you why. I have people on my roster who are in their mid 60s who can outtrain people that I know who are in their mid 20s. Now, on paper, that doesn't make sense because someone in their mid 60s should not be out lifting or out training someone who's in their 20s, but they are. Okay. And the reason for that is because they've been training for the majority of their life. So they've established that strong mind to muscle connection. They have muscle maturity, excellent cardiovascular health. A lot of these people don't really drink or they drink occasionally. They get enough sleep. They follow a good diet. So age isn't a factor for them. There's not any reason for them to be slowing down because they're getting older. Some people might argue that I've been training since I was 15 years old. So I've actually put more mileage on my body in the gym than the average maybe 70-year-old who maybe started training when they were 50, right? So my muscles have more mileage on them at this point. My joints have more wear and tear on them than their joints do, right? When it comes to weightlifting. So it's not the age that's a concern, it's the mileage that you yourself have put on your body. And that's why you look at a lot of professional athletes where they tend up retiring in their late 30s or early 40s. That's very common because of all the wear and tear. Now, late 30s, early 40s is not old, but in professional sports, it is because, again, that's putting your body through pretty much a lot of these people start playing these sports when they're 5 years old. So you're looking at 35 years of constant day in, day out hockey, basketball, baseball, football, whatever they're playing, right? So there's going to be wear and tear on the joints. So it's not their age, it's the mileage that they've put on their body with their preferred sport. And in my case, it's bodybuilding. Okay. But if you train smart and you approach your workouts methodically, intelligently, you can last a very long time. And that's why I have got those clients in their 60s, in their 70s, no joint pain, no knee pain, no hip pain, no problems, no cardiovascular issues, no diabetes, no high blood pressure, nothing. Okay. No high cholesterol levels. And it's because they practice what they preach. So, yes, they go hard in the gym, but they also make sure that they supplement accordingly with their supplement protocols and they're following a good nutritional plan. Okay. So, I've never been a firm believer that just because someone's getting older, they should be taking their foot off the gas. I do believe, though, if you are someone who is older, as in, like, let's say you are in your 60s and now you're just starting off on your training, you might have to be careful because now your joints, your tendons, your ligaments, because you have not been doing any resistance training your entire life, besides maybe walking, or maybe you had a sport that you played, but no serious like weightlifting, your muscles are weaker. Okay, so you're more susceptible to injury than someone who's starting off in their 20s because their muscles are younger. Okay, so it does come down to the mileage thing again, but because you haven't been training, your bones are more brittle, right? So your joints are maybe a little bit more tender. All right. So you have to be careful. But I basically, whenever I design a program for someone, regardless of their age, the main thing I take into consideration is their level of fitness. That is the number one. Okay. That even goes before their goals. Because if someone says to me, I want to lose 100 pounds, but they've never set foot in the gym. I'm not going to be like, all right, I'm going to put you on 2 hours of cardio a day. I'm going to put you on 50 grams of carbs a day. I'm going to put you on 80 grams of fat. I'm going to put you on 300 grams of protein. And we're going to give you a 6-day training split. And all. No. The goal right now should be to create good habits. Let's get you in the gym twice a week. Let's get you doing cardio, brisk walks 3 times a week, and slowly build on that. Okay. So that's the number one goal when you're working with someone of any age, if they're a beginner. Let's establish good habits first, and then we can start getting those goals accomplished that you want, right? Small changes equate to big changes. Big changes will help you accomplish your goal. But you can't just go from zero to big changes. That's not going to work. You got to start creating the habits first. Once you establish good habits, everything else falls into place. Okay. Nick, how much do genetics play a role in muscle building? They actually play quite a big role. Okay, so when you look at professional bodybuilders, a lot of people they right away they'll say steroids. Well, yeah, steroids are a part of bodybuilding, of course, but you take the steroids away, the top five guys on the Mr. Olympia stage would still be the top five guys. Okay, our five women at the bikini competitions or the figure competitions or the men's physique competitions, because they are what we call the genetic elite. Okay, Ronnie Coleman, 8-time Mr. Olympia, he was a genetic freak. All right, the guy is like 3 days out from a bodybuilding show and he's putting barbecue sauce full of sugar and carbs on his chicken. Nobody could get away with that. 90% of the 90, no, 98% of the population can't get away with that. But he was the genetic elite. Okay. So there's genetic elites in every sport. Basketball. I talked about Michael Jordan. Talent for sure. Work ethic, absolutely. But genetics play a role. Okay, they do. So for someone to say that no, it's not genetics, I mean, that's just ignorant. But I've talked about this in the past, how someone who's got really good genetics, but a shitty work ethic can easily be outworked and outperformed by someone who has not so great genetics, but an excellent work ethic. And I've seen that before too. All right. But you don't want to become a slave to your genetics. So, for example, if you say, I got shitty genetics, I shouldn't even bother. Now you're already giving up before you start. And I've yet to this day, I've never met anyone who is truly tapped into their genetic potential. Even myself, because I feel like, okay, if I truly wanted to try to get, I don't know, on a bodybuilding stage on a professional level, I'd have to dedicate more time, more effort to both my training, my diet, my cardio. I'm not willing to do that. That's not really a goal of mine. Okay. My goal is to establish my business. My goal is to make sure that, I'm fully invested in my real estate, in my portfolio. I want to be, living off passive income by the time I'm in my mid 40s easily. That's a goal of mine. Okay. So that's my goal, but I still want to be healthy. I still want to be fit, but I don't think it's what I'm looking for here. The word is, I don't think it's a good idea for people to just think, I'll never look like that, so I shouldn't even bother. Yeah, you're never going to look like Ronnie Coleman. There's a very good chance you're not going to look like Ronnie Coleman. But if you start thinking like, I shouldn't bother because I can't get that, you're already giving up, right? And that's not good. So you can achieve what you can achieve with your genetics and your work ethic. The better your work ethic, the better your results are going to be. 100%. I don't have great genetics. I was able to win a few local bodybuilding shows. They weren't professional bodybuilding shows, but they were local bodybuilding shows. And there were guys on stage with me who had way better genetics than me, but I outworked them. I outdieted them. I outtrained them. I outposed them and I won. So, and that's just like a little bodybuilding show or a couple bodybuilding shows, quite a few bodybuilding shows. But to me, that told me that it's not all genetics. Genetics play a role, but as long as you have realistic expectations of what you can accomplish with your health and your physique, you're not going to become a slave to your genetics and you're not going to become discouraged because you say, well, I'll never be able to play basketball like Michael Jordan, or I'll never be able to, you know, I don't know, play hockey like a Wayne Gretzky or a Sidney Crosby, right? Or I'll never be able to box like a Mike Tyson, whatever it may be. Okay. So you have to pick what your lane is and stay in that lane. And again, stay laser focused and consistent with what you can achieve with your health, your physique, your level of fitness, and your genetics. Okay. Okay. Last question. Nick, how do you stop overeating at night? Backload your fats. All right. Now I do this with a lot of my clients on their diets. So I have a lot of people who tend to snack at night. And so what I'll do is I'll say, depending on the meal order I have, I always tell clients The meal order, I give someone 6 meals. I say, have them in any order you want. I don't care. It makes zero difference to me. But I do recommend to people who have a problem snacking late at night to backload their fats. So there are, like, for example, three of my meals are higher in fat, higher in protein, and low to no carbohydrates. So those are the meals that I recommend that clients have maybe the last two or three meals of the day. Not because carbs are bad, not because carbs are going to make you fat if you have them after 6 p.m., because fats allow you to stay fuller for a longer period of time. So you're less likely to overeat at night if you're feeling full, right? Your insulin levels are not spiking. Your blood sugar level is not crashing because you're eliminating or taking down at least carbohydrates as a whole. And you're really focused on just having the fats and the protein. And I find that works really well for most people. So, for example, one of my meals might be a peanut butter and protein powder shake. So whey isolate and peanut butter. 1 tablespoon of peanut butter and a scoop of whey isolate protein powder. Someone has that, they say they go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, they have that around 8 o'clock at night, usually works for a lot of people. It doesn't work right away for some people, especially for people who snack. But once they get into that habit, like, I'm not even really that hungry. And it's because the fats allow you to stay fuller for a longer period of time. So if you have a problem overeating at night, my recommendation is to try to backload your fats. So, at the beginning of your day, have more carbs, have more protein, and then as the day goes on, try to focus more on the protein and the fat component. Okay. And the fats can come in the form of avocados, extra virgin olive oil. If you want to add maybe some of that into your last meal on your chicken and some rice to help a little bit, maybe your last carb meal. Could be natural peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter. Okay, omega-3 eggs work really well. I talked about this, but I always found for me, eggs worked really well, especially if I was dieting for a show and I utilized eggs. They worked great. They always allowed me to stay fuller for a longer period of time. And I actually liked them too. So I felt like I was actually eating a meal. 'Cause sometimes if you have like the peanut butter shake, it's like I just drank a shake. I still want some actual food. So the eggs felt like, yeah, I'm actually eating something. And there's no carbohydrates in eggs. So if you do find that you're someone who has a problem snacking at night, my recommendation, backload your fats. And if if that doesn't work for you, you might want to look at working with a trainer or coach or nutritionist, dietitian that can help because they're usually, in my experience, when someone is overeating at a certain time of day, it's because they're under eating somewhere else in the day. And whether that's because they skip breakfast and they don't get their first meal till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and now their insulin levels are spiked, their blood sugar levels dropped, and maybe they had a simple carbohydrate. So whatever it may be, there's usually a reason for it. And once I can find that reason, then I can start to tweak the diet a little bit. Okay. But before doing that, if you're someone who's like, I want to try it on my own for a bit, I want to see if I can do this on my own without the help of a trainer or coach, my recommendation, backload your fats towards the end of the day and see if that works. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going out on Monday, December the 15th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, as well as my online coaching business and my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.